When Carol Greenewald, the photo editor, called me and said, "We want you to apply for this job," I said no initially to just the fact that I would interview for the job.
Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and I had the chance to preview a documentary called The Way I See It, which is starring Pete Souza. For those of you who don't know who Pete Souza is, he spent 8 years as the official White House photographer who had all access to Barack Obama for those 8 years. But also, what people may not realize is he did something similar during the Reagan administration in the 80s. So he's been on both sides of the coin. Now, this does involve politics. Obviously, he was the photographer for Ronald Reagan as well as Barack Obama, so that is political in nature. But this is a photography documentary. Now, I had a chance to sit down with Pete for 10, 15 minutes to have a conversation, talk about the documentary, talk about some insider things when it comes to being the official White House photographer, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But also, it will be shown in its entirety on MSNBC on October 9th, and then I'm assuming at some point it may end up on Netflix or Amazon or any one of those streaming services. Now, like I said, this does skew political because it just so happens to deal with politicians. But remember, Pete was there to photograph Ronald Reagan. He was there to photograph Barack Obama for 8 years. And what he's trying to get across with the images that he's showing and the images that he's capturing is how important it is to have someone there to document history, to document the President of the United States and everything that they're doing with all access. So it's more about the type of person that is in the Oval Office, not that they're a Democrat or a Republican, though of course people are going to see it as this is Democrats versus Republican, but it's about the temperament of the person that is in the Oval Office. And again, Pete was there for Ronald Reagan. Pete was there for Barack Obama. So it's just showing you the differences between what he feels it makes a president in comparison and contrast to who the president is today, but also how future presidents might act in the Oval Office. So now I want to cut to the interview that I did with Pete. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'll be back after that to wrap up my thoughts.
First, thank you for documenting history the way that you documented history for the 8 years that you were in the Obama administration.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So what is your goal with Shade and the documentary? Is it do you think people will actually change their minds when they watch this?
I hope there are some that do. I do hope there are some that do.
Would you say that it's a political documentary or not?
Well, I think it is a political documentary because it's discussing the office of the presidency, from with the two different presidents that I photographed from the inside. So yeah, I mean, in that respect, yeah. But I think it's also a lot about, the power of the still image and the importance of the job of the White House photographer in documenting for history. And hopefully people reflect upon what kind of person do we want in the presidency?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I took out of the documentary, and I think was super important that it was there, was the fact that you talk about turning down the Reagan job at the beginning, and that just
what I turned down was just even interviewing for the job.
Okay, so
once I made the decision to interview for the job, and I was offered the job, I said yes right away. But I actually, when Carol Greenewald, the photo editor, called me and said, "We want you to apply for this job," I said no initially to just the fact that I would interview for the job.
Are you pretty happy that you took it at that point?
Well, one of the things that happens when you get to be my age is you sort of look back at all the, decisions you made along the path of life. And I just wonder what my life would be like today if I had not interviewed for that job. It would likely be much different. I'd probably still be in Chicago working for one of the newspapers there. I don't know.
I've gotten messages from people because I posted that I put this out there. And of course, there's always going to be the negative comments that come in, people that say this is left-wing propaganda, which
right.
I know is utter bullshit. It's reality.
I'm used to that.
Right. Well, yeah. How do you deal with it? I mean, I deal with it every day on YouTube, making videos and getting people telling me that I suck and not a real photographer. How do you counter that? Do you ignore it, or do you just continue to throw shade?
For the most part, I ignore it. If somebody makes a legitimate, articulate argument, I try to engage them. I mean, one of the things that I don't understand is there was one photography forum where people were criticizing me for speaking out, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a private citizen, so wait a minute, I can't critique the current president, but it's okay for you to critique me? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I have the same rights as anybody else. I'm not working at the White House. I didn't work for Trump. I'm now a private citizen, and I'm weighing in on how I feel about what's going on.
Yeah, and you just so happen to be in the spotlight, and you do a great job of putting out what you're putting out to just show the opposite of basically how the people that you've worked with are compared to what we currently have in the White House. Now, in terms of when you were offered, because it said on January 5th, you got a call to ask you if you would be the Obama official White House photographer. If they didn't give you the all access that you asked for, would it have been a no?
Yeah.
Just that simple.
Yeah. It's that simple. And I also point out that my wife reminds me that I had the date wrong. It was actually January 4th. How she remembers that, I don't know.
Yeah. But all access is important. You have to be in the room to document exactly what's happening and have the trust to be there, because if you're not, then it just becomes staged images like the one of the Trump administration, after whatever they did.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and the fact that that there was no hesitation on the part of President-elect Obama is step one. I mean, step two is, okay, when you first step into the Oval Office, there's always going to be people, gatekeepers that are going to try to limit your access. And so, I was prepared for that. And I think President Obama understood the importance of having somebody document his presidency for history with a camera. And but it took him, just to put yourself in his shoes. All of a sudden, you got this guy following you around every day, taking pictures all day long, every day. There's a certain, period of time where you got to get him used to the rhythm of that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I spent a couple of campaign stops out with Senator Sanders on this last go around, with the all access aspect, because they understood how important that was. And the funniest thing is I just get thrown to the wolves. He just shows up, I start doing my thing, fly on the wall style, and he was great with it. But after one of the campaign events in Iowa, he comes out, he's like, when did we get a second photographer? And it was just, you try to stay out of the way, but sometimes you have to get the shot, and then he'll forget about it because he's got other things to worry about. Now, you took 2 million files. Were they all shot raw?
Yes.
And with that, what kind of processing are you allowed to do in terms of developing the raw files later?
Essentially, we followed the accepted photojournalism practices. So adjusting, if the file was a little underexposed or overexposed, adjusting exposure, shadows, highlights, and color balance. I'd say, because I was always in and out of crazy different kinds of mixed lighting. My guess is probably 90% of the pictures I made were all on auto white balance. And with the Canon, it did a pretty good job. But occasionally, we'd have to adjust color balance because it'd be a little off.
And cropping is a no-no, correct?
No, I think cropping, I tried to, if you go through what we posted on Flickr, I tried to, just because of the experience I had working for National Geographic, where you're shooting transparency film, at least, we used to. And when you make your presentation to the editor, it's the full frame.
Yep.
So that I became very disciplined about my framing. So I think if you were to go to the Flickr site and I'd say like, 75, 80% of my images were not cropped. There was occasions when, I was sloppy in my framing or, for different reasons where you might crop something in a little bit.
Right. Have you been in touch with the current White House photographer at all?
Not since January 20th, 2017.
So when the, hey, here's your office and good luck.
Yeah.
Do you feel that she has no ability to get in there and actually do justice for the American people?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any inside knowledge. We're not seeing the kind of pictures that you're talking about, but I don't know if that means that they're not being made or that they're choosing not to make them public. I will say that the most revealing picture I've seen from the Trump administration that is truly a behind the scenes moment is that picture of Nancy Pelosi standing, kind of scolding him. And the only reason that picture got out is because Trump himself tweeted it out because he thought it made him look good.
Yeah.
And I think most people looking at that picture thought, wow, Nancy Pelosi is a badass woman, badass Speaker of the House, because she's standing up to, the bully in chief. That's the way I read the picture.
Yeah. Do you think it's damaging to history to not have a archive of images from this presidency compared to what we have going back in history?
If in fact that's the case, like I say, I don't want to presuppose that there is not the kind of access I had. But if that is the case, then yes, I think it is a poor reflection for history.
So that brings up an interesting question then. On January 21st or January 20th, whichever day it is, if Trump doesn't win again and we have a new White House photographer, they have access to what should be an archive of images, as long as they aren't just deleting, because you don't delete anything, correct? Once it's taken, it's history.
Legally, what is supposed to happen is that all the images don't stay at the White House. They go to the National Archives, and we actually started. So we actually started, I think, like a year before starting the transfer of images. Just because when you have my 2 million plus. With the rest of my staff, we had a total of 4 million images, all raw files. You can imagine, that transfer took a while to coordinate. And the Trump administration is going to have to transfer all the images to the National Archives legally.
Right. And if they don't, we've seen what happens when they skirt the law anyway. Yeah,
I mean, I sort of made the point the other day where Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, made, I think it was a slip up when he said that he has tapes of all of his conversations with Bob Woodward. And if that's the case, then those tapes are public property, and those tapes should also go to the National Archives.
I guess to wrap it up, if Biden does win and they call you, hey, Pete, would you like to come out for 4 years? Would you do it?
Look, I love Joe Biden. He is one of the most compassionate, empathetic people I know. I hope he's the next president. He's the right man at the right time for our country. But, this job took so much out of me for 8 years. I have a granddaughter now. I want to see her grow up. And I'm hoping that Joe does not call me. but I may call him because I want to make sure that whoever he does hire, that person gets the same kind of access that I got to President Obama, and to reinforce the importance of having somebody with that access to document his presidency for history.
I understand that. You can slip in my number, and I'm ready to go at any point. All right, Pete. Thank you very much for putting the documentary together. It's fantastic. I love the photojournalistic aspect. I love the message that's in it, and keep on keeping on.
Thanks for having me on, and I still shoot raw all the time.
Good. It's the only way to be.
Yep. Okay,
right,
thanks.
2 million raw files and a total of 4 million through those 8 years were captured by the official White House photographers. That is pure insanity. I want to thank Pete for taking the time to sit down and have this interview. And remember, the documentary comes out on September 18th in select theaters. It will stream in its entirety on October 9th on MSNBC. And again, in the future, I'm assuming it will be on some streaming service. If you can watch this at any point, I highly recommend it because of the photographic aspect to it. Again, seeing what Pete was able to document from the Reagan administration to the Obama administration, in contrast to what's going on right now, is really important. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, Polin, FroPhoto.com. See ya.
Every 3 months, we would go to Walter Reed, and he would visit wounded warriors. I think it affected him emotionally. One time he went, and we saw Corey Remsburg. He had gotten injured by an IED. The guy that he was on patrol with in Afghanistan was killed instantly. Corey was thrown into a ravine. He was underwater. Somehow he survived, not drowning. He spent months in a coma. He lost half his eyesight and the ability to control half his body. He had to relearn how to walk, talk, and eat. But here's the thing that really took me aback. President Obama had met Corey in Normandy the previous June. And I had taken a picture of that encounter. And the picture, we had sent a copy to the family, and it was taped on the hospital wall. And I was looking at that picture and looking at Corey and saying to myself, this is the real cost of war.